Manager laughed at a black man in rags. Then his termination letter came an hour later. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let's dive into the story. It was another busy morning in the city, and the sun had barely risen over the skyline. In a small, high-rise office building, the usual hum of business began to take shape. People in suits and ties shuffled around, rushing to start their workday. But in the midst of all this professional hustle, one man stood out, Marcus. He wasn't like the others. He didn't wear a crisp suit or polished shoes. He didn't carry a leather briefcase or wear a corporate smile. Instead, Marcus was dressed in tattered clothes, his shirt faded and his shoes worn down to the soles. He had recently been hired as a temporary janitor at a high-end firm, tasked with cleaning the offices and keeping the place tidy. Marcus had never imagined that his life would take him here, scrubbing floors and emptying trash cans in a building that seemed worlds away from his reality. But life had a way of throwing curveballs. A string of bad luck, personal losses, and economic hardships had led him to this moment. He had been trying to get back on his feet, but it wasn't easy. The job wasn't glamorous, but it paid the bills. He didn't mind the hard work. In fact, he was used to it. What bothered him most was the way people treated him. Like he didn't belong. Like he was invisible. That morning, as he walked down the hallway to his designated cleaning area, he couldn't help but overhear a conversation taking place in the nearby office. The door was slightly ajar, and through the crack, he could hear laughter. "Look at this guy," a voice sneered. "What's he doing here? He looks like he just walked off the street." Marcus froze, the words cutting through him like a knife. It wasn't the first time he'd heard something like this, but this time it stung. He had come to work that morning determined to keep his head down and focus on his tasks. But now the laughter seemed to follow him, echoing in his ears. The voice belonged to Mr. Thompson, the company's manager, a man who was known for his arrogance and dismissive attitude toward those he deemed lesser. Marcus had always tried to avoid any interaction with him. But today, he couldn't escape the sting of his words. He continued down the hallway, trying to shake off the insult, but the moment stuck with him. It wasn't just about the words. It was about the feeling of being humiliated in front of others. As he entered the break room to collect the trash, he caught a glimpse of Mr. Thompson through the window. The manager was sitting in his office, sipping his coffee, looking as smug as ever. Marcus couldn't help but think to himself, how could someone so successful be so cruel to people like me? But little did Mr. Thompson know, Marcus wasn't as powerless as he seemed. He had been keeping an eye on the company's operations, noticing small discrepancies in the financial records he had accidentally stumbled upon while cleaning the offices. He wasn't just a janitor. He had a sharp mind, a keen eye for detail, and a background in accounting before his life had taken a downer. What happened next would change everything. As Marcus continued with his work, the sting of Mr. Thompson's words lingered in his mind. He swept the hallway, his thoughts consumed by the unfairness of it all. He had worked hard his whole life, always doing his best to make an honest living. Yet here he was, reduced to nothing more than a joke to the very people he helped serve. The laughter still echoed in his ears, and the humiliation burned deeper with every step he took. But he couldn't let it distract him. Not today. He had a plan, and he wasn't going to let anyone get in his way. Hours passed, and the workday began to wind down. Marcus took the last of the trash bags from the floor, his movements mechanical as he went about his job. He'd seen Mr. Thompson leave his office and head into the break room, probably to grab a late afternoon coffee, just like he did every day. This was Marcus's chance. He slipped quietly into the manager's office, making sure no one saw him. His heart pounded in his chest as he moved toward the desk, where Mr. Thompson always kept his files. It was risky, but he had to know if the manager's arrogance had any foundation, or if it was just smoke and mirrors. Marcus carefully sifted through the papers, scanning documents that appeared to be financial reports. They seemed ordinary at first glance, but then he saw it. Discrepancies, strange numbers, and patterns that didn't add up. He had once worked as an accountant before his life had taken a downward turn, and his trained eye immediately picked up on the inconsistencies. There were funds being funneled into accounts that shouldn't have been touched. The more he dug, the clearer it became. Mr. Thompson was involved in some shady business, and Marcus now had the evidence to prove it. As he looked over the files, a feeling of satisfaction washed over him. For all the mocking, for all the humiliation, Mr. Thompson wasn't untouchable. In fact, he was vulnerable, just like everyone else. Marcus felt a sense of justice bubbling up inside him, a quiet power that he hadn't felt in a long time. But this wasn't the time to celebrate. He knew that if he were caught, everything could go wrong. So, he slipped the files back into place, making sure nothing looked disturbed. Marcus left the office and continued with his work, trying his best to remain calm and collected. He had one more task to complete. He had to make sure Mr. Thompson got the message. The following hour dragged on. The office was quiet, everyone busy with their own tasks, but Marcus knew that the moment was approaching. At exactly 5:30, the office started emptying out. The workers gathered their things and left for the night, but Marcus stayed behind, watching through the window as Mr. Thompson left his office and began walking toward the elevator. Marcus took a deep breath, his heart racing. He could do this. He approached the office manager's desk, where a letter was waiting. It was a termination letter, one that Marcus had crafted carefully, with precision. The contents were simple but undeniable. The evidence was there, and it was damning. Marcus made sure it was addressed to Mr. Thompson personally, and placed it on the desk where he always sat. He stood back for a moment, staring at the letter. This was it. The moment he had been waiting for. Marcus knew that once Mr. Thompson read that letter, everything would change. The balance of power would shift. The man who had laughed at him, who had treated him like a nobody, would soon find out that Marcus was no one's fool. He had not only the courage to stand up for himself, but the knowledge and intelligence to outsmart those who thought they could walk all over him. The next few minutes felt like hours. Marcus continued to work, keeping his movements steady and purposeful. Finally, just as he thought it was safe, the elevator doors opened. Mr. Thompson stepped out, looking exhausted but confident, as always. He walked toward his desk without noticing Marcus standing in the corner, but when he saw the letter, everything changed. He stopped in his tracks, his eyes narrowing as he read the name on the envelope. His face turned pale as he tore open the letter. Marcus could see the shock in his eyes as he skimmed the contents, his hands trembling. The manager's usually composed demeanor faltered. Marcus watched from a distance, feeling a quiet satisfaction settle over him. He had done it. The man who had mocked him, who had belittled him for being nothing more than a janitor, was now the one who would face the consequences of his actions. It was a small victory, but it was his. And it was only the beginning. The office was quiet now, the hum of the fluorescent lights the only sound filling the room. Marcus stood just outside, his heart still pounding in his chest, watching as Mr. Thompson read the termination letter in disbelief. The shock on his face was priceless. Marcus knew that the moment of power reversal had arrived, and he couldn't help but feel a sense of calm satisfaction wash over him. This wasn't just about a job. This was about respect. This was about standing up for himself and showing the world that no one could be underestimated, no matter their position in life. Mr. Thompson folded the letter slowly, his hands shaking as he placed it on the desk. He stood motionless for a moment, staring at the words as if he couldn't believe what had just happened. For a man who had lived his life by his status, his wealth, and his ability to control, this was a blow he had never anticipated. Marcus, the janitor, the man he had laughed at earlier, had outsmarted him. Marcus turned away, quietly heading to his next task. He had done what needed to be done. There was no reason to stick around and watch Mr. Thompson squirm. The change had already taken place. But as he walked down the hallway, a part of him couldn't resist. He paused just outside the office door, listening. He knew Mr. Thompson would be calling someone soon. Perhaps the board of directors, perhaps human resources, but whatever it was clear the man was already plotting his next move. As Marcus finished cleaning the last few rooms, he couldn't shake the feeling of what he had just accomplished. He had done more than just clean offices and floors. He had uncovered something dark and wrong in the system, and he had found a way to make it right. In a world where people were often overlooked, where the powerful trampled on the powerless, Marcus had shown that one person, one small act of courage, could change everything. The next morning, Marcus arrived at work, prepared for whatever might come next. He didn't expect a grand gesture, a thank you, or an apology. That wasn't why he had done it. But when he walked into the break room, he saw something that made him pause. A group of employees stood around, murmuring. A few of them glanced over at Marcus, then quickly looked away. There was an energy in the room that hadn't been there the day before. It was a mix of confusion and awe that he grabbed his cleaning supplies and started working, but the whispers continued. He could feel the eyes on him, some filled with admiration, others with disbelief. He didn't care. It wasn't about them. It wasn't about being seen or praised. It was about knowing he had done the right thing. And deep down, Marcus knew that his actions would ripple through the company, whether they realized it now or not. Just after lunch, as he was finishing up his shift, his supervisor approached him. Mr. Davis, the head of facilities, had been in the building for years and was known to keep to himself. But today he seemed different. Marcus, Mr. Davis called, his voice low and serious. I need to talk to you. Marcus didn't respond immediately, his heart racing. What could this be about? Had they figured out what he had done? Mr. Davis led him to a quiet hallway, away from the prying eyes of the other employees. I heard about yesterday, he said, and I have to say, I'm impressed. Marcus felt a brief surge of pride, but kept his face neutral. Look, Mr. Davis continued, I know you've been through a lot. But what you did yesterday, it took guts. You exposed something, and now people are talking. They're talking about how one man, someone like you, was able to do something that no one else could. It doesn't happen often. You should know that. Marcus couldn't believe what he was hearing. This wasn't the response he had expected. He had braced himself for rejection, for reprimands, but not this. I just did what I had to do, Marcus replied, his voice steady. I couldn't let it go on anymore. Mr. Davis nodded. Well, I want you to know something. We've been keeping an eye on you for a while. Your work ethic, your attention to detail, and now this. You've got potential. We don't just need someone to clean. We need someone who can see things, someone who can act when the time comes. And I think you're that person. Marcus stared at him, unsure of what to say. It was the last thing he expected. Consider this a warning, Mr. Davis said. You might just be the kind of person we need for something bigger here. And I'll make sure your name gets on the right list. For the first time in a long while, Marcus felt something he hadn't felt in years, hope. Marcus walked through the building the next morning with a sense of anticipation that he hadn't felt in years. The dull ache of his old life seemed to have lifted, replaced with a quiet excitement. Everything was different now. He had not only earned the respect of his colleagues, but had also done something far greater. He had exposed the hidden cracks in the system, a system that many had ignored for far too long. His actions the day before had sparked a shift in the company, one that Marcus had never expected. He knew it wasn't going to be easy, but something had changed. The quiet power of his actions was now reverberating through the walls of the office, and he could feel it as he arrived at his usual work area. He noticed a few of the higher-ups walking through the hallway, their faces serious, as if they were discussing something important. He kept his head down, focusing on his tasks, not wanting to draw attention to himself. But the air was thick with something unspoken. He could feel it in the way the employees passed him, their glances slightly different, filled with curiosity, admiration, or maybe even respect. It was subtle, but it was there. By lunchtime, Marcus was finishing up his cleaning duties when he was called to the break room. He wasn't sure what to expect. He had no idea if what Mr. Davis had said the day before was genuine or just an empty gesture. But when he entered the break room, he found Mr. Davis waiting for him. The man looked different, no longer the detached supervisor, but someone who seemed more approachable, more human. Marcus, can you come here for a second? Mr. Davis said, motioning for him to step forward. His tone was calm, but there was an edge to it, something that made Marcus's heart skip a beat. Of course, sir, Marcus replied, trying to keep his voice steady as he walked toward him. Have a seat, Mr. Davis said, gesturing to the chair across from him. Marcus sat down, wondering what this was all about. I want to talk to you about what happened yesterday, Mr. Davis began. You know, the way things went down with Mr. Thompson. It's not something that happens often, not in this company. People usually don't have the courage to act on things they know are wrong, especially when the person doing wrong holds all the power. But you did. Marcus nodded, unsure of what to say. He had expected this conversation to be uncomfortable, but he didn't expect the respect in Mr. Davis's voice. I'm not going to sugarcoat it, Mr. Davis continued. You were right. Mr. Thompson has been bending the rules for a long time, and no one ever did anything about it. But you, Marcus, you changed that. And not just for him, but for the whole company. We can't let things like this go unnoticed, and we can't let people like him think they're untouchable. Marcus didn't know what to say. He had never imagined that his actions would lead to something like this. All he had wanted was to get some respect, to show that he wasn't invisible. He had never planned to be a hero or to take down a powerful figure in the company. But now, here he was, being praised for something that, just the day before, had seemed impossible. I want you to know that I've already spoken to HR, Mr. Davis said. We're going to make sure that everything Mr. Thompson was involved in gets investigated properly. And, Marcus, I want you to know that you're not just a janitor anymore. You've proven you have the skills, the intelligence, and the courage to do more than just clean floors. Marcus looked up at him, surprised. What do you mean? He asked, his voice barely a whisper. Dunamar. Davis smiled slightly. I've put in a good word for you. You've got potential, Marcus. You're exactly the kind of person we need in this company. Someone who can think on their feet and stand up for what's right. We're going to give you a shot at something bigger. For a moment, Marcus couldn't believe what he was hearing. Was this really happening? Had he truly earned this chance, or was it some kind of mistake? But the look in Mr. Davis's eyes told him it was real. We've got an opening in the finance department, Mr. Davis continued. It's not much, but it's a start. We need someone to keep an eye on the numbers, make sure everything's running smoothly. And I think you're the right person for the job. If you're willing to step up, this could be the opportunity you've been waiting for. Marcus sat there, stunned. The world he had once thought was closed off to him, the world of office politics and corporate power, was suddenly within his reach. He had worked hard for so long, never expecting anything in return, never imagining that he could climb the ladder. But now, here it was. I'm in, Marcus said, his voice firm. I'll do whatever it takes. Mr. Davis nodded. Good. We'll get everything sorted out. Just keep doing what you're doing. You've already shown us that you have what it takes. And remember, the next time someone tries to look down on you, you stand tall. Because now, you've got the power. Marcus couldn't believe how quickly things were moving. The morning after Mr. Davis's offer, he walked into the finance department for the first time, the weight of what was happening slowly sinking in. He had never imagined that he would be sitting at one of those desks, surrounded by the hum of the company's highest-level operations. It felt surreal, but he wasn't about to back down now. This was his moment to prove that he wasn't just a janitor anymore. He was more than that. Much more. As he sat down at his new desk, the team leader, Sarah, gave him a brief rundown of the department's operations. She was a no-nonsense type of woman, sharp, direct, and clearly respected by her colleagues. Her eyes quickly assessed Marcus before she spoke, and for the first time, he saw a look of recognition. She had heard about the incident with Mr. Thompson, and from the way she treated him, Marcus knew that it had changed things. She didn't view him as just the janitor anymore. I don't know much about your background, Marcus, Sarah said, her tone measured. But we're going to get you up to speed quickly. The work here is fast-paced, and there's no room for mistakes. I hope you're ready for that. Marcus nodded, determined. I'm ready. For the next few days, Marcus dove headfirst into the numbers. He had always had a head for math, and his accounting skills, honed from years of experience, quickly came into play. As he analyzed spreadsheets, examined budgets, and helped optimize financial processes, he realized how much he had missed this part of his life. It wasn't just the intellectual challenge that thrilled him. It was the sense of purpose, of being a part of something that mattered. He wasn't just cleaning up after people anymore. He was making a difference. But with every new day, the pressure mounted. His colleagues, while polite, were wary of him. Marcus knew that they didn't quite trust him yet. They had heard the rumors, the stories of how he had exposed Mr. Thompson's corruption, and now they wondered what kind of person he really was. Was he truly one of them, or was he just a fluke, a man who got lucky? Sarah seemed to be the only one who truly believed in him. She pushed him hard, giving him more responsibilities than he expected. He was given access to crucial accounts and financial documents, and it didn't take long for him to uncover more discrepancies. Small ones, hidden deep within the company's paperwork, were left unchecked. Marcus didn't know what it all meant yet, but he felt something wasn't quite right. One late afternoon, after everyone had gone home, Marcus stayed behind to review some accounts. The office was eerily quiet, the silence only broken by the rhythmic clicking of his keyboard. As he sifted through the latest financial report, his eyes landed on something strange, a set of irregularities that stood out like a sore thumb. It was subtle, but Marcus had learned to trust his instincts. The figures didn't match up, and the more he dug, the clearer it became. Someone had been funneling money through fake transactions. It wasn't a large amount yet, but it was enough to raise a red flag. His pulse quickened. He had seen this before in his old life, in the accounts he had audited, but never this close to home. This wasn't just a mistake. This was deliberate. His first instinct was to go straight to Sarah, but he hesitated. There was something about this that didn't feel right. What if Sarah was involved? What if this went higher than just the finance department? Marcus knew he couldn't make a rash decision. He needed more evidence, more clarity. So, he gathered the files, printed the evidence, and hid them in a secure folder for now. This was bigger than just his current role. This was about the company's future and his own. The next morning, Marcus came in early, the weight of what he had found heavy on his shoulders. He had no idea who he could trust. Sarah was the one person who had shown him respect, but even she could be compromised. He sat at his desk, staring at the printed reports in front of him. This was the moment that would define everything. If he went forward with what he had found, there was no going back. His career, his future, everything would change. But then he remembered the look on Mr. Davis's face when he had offered him a chance. This wasn't just about protecting the company. It was about standing up for what was right. And that was something Marcus was no stranger to. The decision was clear. That afternoon, he walked into Sarah's office with the reports in hand. She looked up from her desk, her expression unreadable. "What's this?" she asked. "It's everything," Marcus said, his voice steady. "I found some irregularities, and I think it's time to take it to the next level." Sarah's face softened, and for the first time since he had started working in the department, he saw a flicker of trust in her eyes. She didn't hesitate. "Let's get this handled," she said. Her tone firmed. As they walked down the hall to the executive offices, Marcus realized something. He wasn't just here to clean up financial messes. He was here to fix the system, to make sure that things like this never happened again. And no matter where this journey took him, he was ready for it. As Marcus walked into the executive office with Sarah, the weight of what was about to unfold hung heavy in the air. His heart raced, but his resolve was unshaken. He had come too far to turn back now. They had uncovered the discrepancies in the company's finances, and now they needed to confront the higher-ups, to expose what had been hidden for so long. Marcus could feel the gravity of the moment, but he remained calm, his mind focused on what needed to be done. They entered the office of the CEO, Mr. Richards, a man who commanded respect and attention wherever he went. His reputation was built on years of success, but Marcus knew better than to trust appearances. Beneath that polished exterior, there were cracks that had allowed corruption to thrive in the company for years. And now, Marcus and Sarah were about to expose those cracks. Mr. Richards looked up from his desk as they entered, his sharp eyes quickly assessing the situation. He motioned for them to sit, his expression unreadable. Marcus could feel the tension rising in the room. This wasn't just a casual meeting. This was the moment where everything would change. Sarah spoke first, her voice steady but firm. "Mr. Richards, we have something important to discuss. Marcus has uncovered some serious discrepancies in the company's finances. We believe it's crucial that you see the evidence." Marcus placed the folder on the desk, his hands steady despite the storm of emotions brewing inside him. Mr. Richards didn't say anything at first. He simply took the folder and began flipping through the pages. The silence in the room was thick, each second stretching out as Marcus waited for the inevitable reaction. It didn't take long for Mr. Richards to look up, his face hardening. "I see," he said slowly, his voice colder than before. "This is serious." "Exactly," Sarah replied. "And we need to address it immediately." Mr. Richards leaned back in his chair, his fingers tapping rhythmically on the desk. Marcus could feel the tension building, the unspoken weight of what was at stake hanging in the air. This was no longer about a simple case of financial mismanagement. This was about the future of the company, and about whether or not the truth would be allowed to come to light. "Who else knows about this?" Mr. Richards asked, his eyes narrowing as he focused on Sarah. "At the moment, it's just us," Sarah said. "But we're prepared to go further if necessary." Mr. Richards remained silent for a moment, his gaze flickering between the documents in front of him and the two of them. Marcus knew what he was thinking. He was trying to decide whether to cover it up or confront the truth. The weight of that decision was palpable. But Marcus was ready. He had already made his choice. He wasn't going to back down now. "We've been aware of some irregularities," Mr. Richards said after a long pause. "But we didn't think it was this bad." Marcus felt a knot tighten in his stomach. "This is just the tip of the iceberg," he said quietly. "There's more, much more. The deeper you look, the worse it gets." Mr. Richards looked up, his face a mixture of frustration and resignation. "So what now?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Sarah answered before Marcus could speak. "Now, we need to take immediate action. We can't let this continue. We need to fix what's broken, and we need to start with transparency." Marcus nodded. "This company has a chance to right its wrongs. But only if we take responsibility. Only if we stop letting people like Mr. Thompson get away with their actions." Mr. Richards stared at them both, his jaw clenched. For a moment, Marcus thought he might try to deny everything, to sweep it all under the rug. But then Mr. Richards stood up, the decision clear in his eyes. "All right," he said. "I'll back you on this. But we need to move quickly. We need to cut the rot out before it spreads any further." Marcus could hardly believe what he was hearing. This was it. The moment he had hoped for, but never fully expected. The man who had once held all the power, who had seemed untouchable, was now backing them. He wasn't just going to sweep it all under the rug. He was going to face the truth head-on, for the first time in years. Marcus felt a sense of peace settle over him. It wasn't about the job, the money, or the recognition. It was about doing the right thing. About standing up for what was just, no matter the cost. As they walked out of Mr. Richards's office, Marcus exchanged a look with Sarah. They had done it. They had taken down one of the most powerful figures in the company, and in doing so, they had exposed the truth. It wasn't over yet. There was still work to be done. But for the first time in a long time, Marcus felt like he was exactly where he was supposed to be. And as they walked down the hallway, the weight of everything they had accomplished hung in the air, but this time, it didn't feel heavy. It felt like freedom. The next few days were a whirlwind for Marcus. After the meeting with Mr. Richards, the atmosphere in the company had shifted. Employees who had once avoided him now nodded in passing, a quiet respect in their eyes. Sarah continued to work closely with him, guiding him through the complex process of reporting the findings and ensuring the company took swift action. But for Marcus, it was a strange feeling, being seen, being heard, and yet still not fully understanding how much had changed. As he walked through the hallways of the building, the weight of what had happened started to settle in. Mr. Thompson had been fired immediately, his actions investigated thoroughly. The company had promised transparency, and they were beginning to make changes. But Marcus knew that change wasn't something that happened overnight. It would take time to rebuild the trust that had been broken. One afternoon, Sarah asked Marcus to meet her in her office. When he walked in, she was standing by the window, looking out over the city. She turned when she heard him enter, her expression serious. "Marcus, I've been talking to Mr. Richards," she began, her voice steady. "He's decided to move you to a new role, one with more responsibility." Marcus blinked, surprised. "What kind of role?" "We've been working to establish a new audit team," Sarah explained. "We need someone who understands the system, someone who isn't afraid to dig deep and find the truth. Someone like you. Mr. Richards believes you're the right person for the job." Marcus felt a sense of disbelief. Not long ago, he had been just a janitor, someone people ignored, and now he was being offered a position that could change his entire career. "I don't know what to say," he replied, his voice low. Sarah smiled, a rare expression of warmth. "You don't have to say anything. Just know that you've earned this. It's not just about your technical skills. It's about your integrity, your willingness to stand up for what's right. That's what we need." Marcus felt a wave of gratitude and a rush of emotions he wasn't sure how to process. "I won't let you down," he said, his voice filled with sincerity. "You won't," Sarah said. "We need people like you. The kind who are willing to challenge the status quo, even when it's uncomfortable. And I think you're going to make a real difference here." As the days passed, Marcus settled into his new role. The transition was challenging. There was a lot to learn, and the stakes were higher than ever. But he felt a new sense of purpose. He wasn't just cleaning floors anymore. He was cleaning up the mess that had been left behind by greed and dishonesty. He spent his days working alongside Sarah and the rest of the audit team, reviewing documents, analyzing data, and uncovering even more irregularities. Each discovery felt like another piece of the puzzle falling into place. But it wasn't just the financials that needed attention. It was the culture, the way people operated, the way they accepted things that were wrong because they were too afraid to speak up. Marcus knew that true change would take time, but he was ready to lead that change point one evening. As Marcus left the office late after a long day of reviewing reports, he walked past the lobby. He saw a few of his former colleagues, those who had once looked down on him, gathered near the elevators. They didn't notice him at first, but then one of them glanced up and met his eyes. For a moment, there was a flicker of recognition. And then, to Marcus's surprise, they stepped aside to let him pass. A subtle gesture of respect, he didn't say anything. He just kept walking, the weight of the moment settling on him. For the first time, Marcus felt truly seen. He wasn't just the janitor anymore. He was someone who had earned his place, someone who had proven that, no matter where you start, you can always rise above. The change was slow, but it was happening. And Marcus knew that he was part of something bigger now. Something that would shape not just his future, but the future of everyone in the company. It was a future where integrity mattered, where people stood up for what was right, and where no one would be ignored again. As he walked out into the cool night air, Marcus felt a sense of pride that he had never felt before. He wasn't just working for a paycheck anymore. He was working to build a better world, one that valued people for who they were, not for their clothes or their status, and that was worth everything. Weeks passed, and Marcus settled into his new role at the company. What had started as a job he took simply to make ends meet had transformed into a purpose-driven career. Each day brought new challenges, but also new opportunities to make a real difference. As he worked through financial audits, dug deeper into records, and provided insight into how to fix the issues, he felt more and more like an integral part of the company's future. The respect he had earned didn't come with grand gestures or formal celebrations, but in quiet acknowledgments from his colleagues. They were starting to see him as more than just the janitor. He was someone who could lead, who had the intelligence and the courage to change things for the better. One afternoon, as he reviewed a set of quarterly reports with Sarah, the door to her office opened. Mr. Richards stepped inside, a serious look on his face. Marcus stood up instinctively, feeling the weight of his gaze. He wasn't sure what this meeting was about, but the fact that it was Mr. Richards, CEO of the company, coming to speak with him directly meant it was important. "Marcus, I wanted to speak with you about something," Mr. Richards began, his voice steady. "You've done outstanding work these past few weeks. I've been following your progress closely, and I'm impressed. We've made significant improvements thanks to your efforts." Marcus didn't know what to say. Being praised by Mr. Richards, a man who had once seemed untouchable, felt surreal. "You've shown a level of integrity and commitment that is rare," Mr. Richards continued. "And because of that, I believe you're ready for more responsibility." Marcus's heart skipped a beat. He had been waiting for this moment, but he didn't know it would come so soon. "I'm offering you a position," Mr. Richards said, walking over to a chair and sitting down. "It's a senior role in the corporate compliance department. We need someone who can not only keep the company accountable, but also continue the work of restoring the trust that we've lost. You've already proven you can handle the pressure, and I believe you're the right person for this job." For a moment, Marcus didn't know how to respond. This wasn't just a promotion, it was a complete change in his career trajectory. Just a few months ago, he had been scraping by as a janitor, overlooked and dismissed by everyone. Now, he was being asked to take a seat at the table, to help guide the company through its most critical phase of rebuilding. "I don't know what to say," Marcus said, his voice quiet. "I've never been in a role like that before." Mr. Richards smiled. "That's the thing, Marcus. You've already been in the role. You've been leading with your actions, with your integrity. This position is just a formality. You've earned it." The weight of the responsibility settled over Marcus, but so did a sense of purpose. This was it. This was the opportunity he had always dreamed of, except it wasn't about the job itself. It was about the impact he could make. It was about ensuring that the company never returned to its old ways. As Marcus accepted the offer, he felt a deep sense of fulfillment. This wasn't just about financial success or career advancement. This was about justice, about standing up for what was right, and about showing the world that no one, no matter where they came from, should ever be underestimated. Over the next few weeks, Marcus began his new role. The transition was challenging, as he worked with a new team of people who had once been higher-ups in the company, but he didn't back down. He continued the work that had already begun, taking the lead on audits, implementing new compliance procedures, and ensuring that every department followed ethical guidelines. The respect he had earned from his colleagues grew, and soon, it became clear that Marcus wasn't just an outsider trying to fit in. He was becoming a key part of the company's leadership team. But with this new responsibility came new challenges. The pressure was intense. Marcus often stayed late into the evening, poring over documents, reviewing reports, and making sure every detail was accounted for. He knew the stakes were high. This wasn't just about keeping a job. It was about making sure that the company he had helped expose was on the right path moving forward. One evening, as he sat alone in his office, reviewing the latest compliance report, Marcus looked out the window. He had come so far, from scrubbing floors to sitting in the CEO's office, making decisions that would affect the future of the company. It was hard to believe how much his life had changed in such a short time. But he knew that this was just the beginning. As he leaned back in his chair, a knock on the door interrupted his thoughts. It was Sarah, holding a folder in her hand. "Marcus, I think you're going to want to see this," she said, her voice urgent. He stood up, walking toward her. "What's going on?" "I think we've uncovered something bigger," Sarah said, handing him the folder. "There's more going on beneath the surface, and I think it's time we dig even deeper." Marcus opened the folder, his eyes scanning the contents. His heart raced. The work wasn't over. There were still forces within the company that needed to be brought to light, and Marcus knew that he was the one to do it. It was a new chapter, but the fight for integrity, for justice, was far from over. And Marcus was ready to continue the work he had started. Weeks passed, and as Marcus continued his work, the company slowly transformed. What had once been a place of power struggles and corruption was now becoming a beacon of change. Marcus had helped bring that change to life, but the road ahead was still long. There were still whispers in the halls, but they were different now. They weren't about his past as a janitor, or the way people had looked down on him. Now, the whispers were about respect. His colleagues recognized him for his hard work, his determination, and his unwavering commitment to making the company better. He sat at his desk one afternoon, reviewing another set of compliance reports, when his phone buzzed. It was a text from Sarah. "We need to talk. Meet me in the conference room." Marcus' stomach tightened. He knew it was important. He grabbed his notes, straightened his tie, and walked toward the conference room, his mind racing with possibilities. When he arrived, Sarah was already there, standing by the window, her arms crossed. There was a serious look on her face, one that he hadn't seen before. "Marcus, we've been doing well," Sarah began, her voice steady but heavy. "We've made progress, but there's still more we need to uncover. We've discovered that the rod in this company wasn't just Mr. Thompson. There are more players involved. We need to go after them." Marcus felt a chill run down his spine. He had known that the fight wasn't over, but hearing it out loud made the reality hit him harder. It wasn't just about cleaning up one bad apple. It was about rooting out the systemic corruption that had plagued the company for years. "We can't do it alone," Sarah continued. "But with the support of the board, and with your position now, we have the leverage we need." Marcus nodded. He had already proven he could handle tough situations, but this was bigger than anything he had dealt with before. He wasn't just going after corrupt executives anymore. Now, he was fighting a system that had been built to protect the guilty. But he wasn't afraid. He had seen the power of truth, and he knew how dangerous it could be when wielded correctly. "This is it," Marcus said, his voice firm. "We go all in. We take them down, one by one. No more half measures." Sarah smiled, the first sign of genuine emotion he had seen in her in weeks. "I knew I could count on you." The next several weeks were a blur of meetings, investigations, and confidential reports. Marcus worked tirelessly, uncovering more and more about the deep-seated corruption within the company. He couldn't believe how far it went. The manipulation of accounts, the false reports, the payoffs to government officials. It was all coming to light, piece by piece. But even as the truth came out, Marcus faced immense pressure. He had made enemies in high places, and they weren't going to take his actions lying down. Threats were made, subtle at first, then more direct. He was warned to back off, to leave things alone. But Marcus wasn't the same man who had walked into that office building months ago. He had changed. He had found his voice, and he wasn't going to let anyone silence him. One afternoon, As he was leaving the office, a man in a dark suit approached him in the parking garage. Marcus recognized him instantly, someone who had been on the periphery of the investigations, a figure in the shadows. "I think you've done enough," the man said, his voice cold. Marcus didn't flinch. "I haven't even started yet." The man's expression darkened. "You don't know what you're messing with. People like you don't change the system. You only end up hurting yourself." Marcus stood tall, looking the man in the eye. "I'm not here to change the system. I'm here to expose the truth. And the truth is powerful enough to take down anyone who stands in its way." The man said nothing more. He just walked away, disappearing into the night. As Marcus watched him go, he felt a quiet confidence wash over him. He wasn't afraid anymore. He had come this far, and he wasn't backing down. His journey had been long, but it had made him stronger. He had started as a janitor, an invisible man in a world of power and wealth. But now, he was someone who held the truth in his hands, and that was all the power he needed. A week later, the company announced the termination of several high-ranking executives. The investigations were ongoing, but the damage had already been done. The culture of corruption was being replaced with a culture of accountability. Marcus had helped make that happen. He had done what no one else had the courage to do. He had stood up for what was right, even when the odds were stacked against him. And in doing so, he had earned the respect of his colleagues, his company, and himself. As he stood in front of the building one last time, looking out over the city, Marcus knew that his journey wasn't over. He had fought for justice, and in the process, he had found his own strength. It wasn't about the job or the title, it was about the impact he had made. And he knew that whatever came next, he was ready to face it head-on. The world had underestimated him once. It wouldn't make that mistake again. Discover the inspiring journey of Marcus, a man who rises from humble beginnings in a janitor's uniform to a powerful force for change in a corporate world. In this gripping story, Marcus uncovers corruption at the highest levels and proves that integrity and determination can defy the odds. As a part of Black stories that highlight resilience and courage, this narrative sheds light on the challenges faced by those underestimated by society. Through perseverance, Marcus exposes financial misconduct and uncovers deep secrets that threaten the stability of a powerful company. His path is filled with obstacles, but his dedication to justice leads him to unexpected heights. This story is a testament to the power of standing up for what's right, even when faced with powerful opposition. With every twist and turn, Black stories unfold in ways that demonstrate the strength of character and the impact one person can have. From the shadows of discrimination to the forefront of corporate change, Marcus' transformation is an inspiring example of how embracing your power can lead to transformation. This tale is one of many Black stories that reflect the resilience, intelligence, and strength of individuals who refuse to be silenced. Explore this journey of redemption, empowerment, and triumph over adversity, where every step taken brings Marcus closer to a future shaped by his unwavering belief in doing what's right.